This program contains mature language and themes that may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised.
Dear Steven, you're only 10 and you feel like you're already on your own, but you're not. There's not always someone home when you need them, but there's a lot of people who care about and want the best for you. You can always lean on Nicole and cousin Justin. They're not always around either, but they do anything for you. You're going to understand mom a lot more when you get older and realize the struggles she's dealing with on a daily basis. It's hard being addicted, trying to keep your shit together, make money, and be a single mom as well. But she's doing the best she knows how to do right now. Dad and Gramps are waiting for the day you make up your mind and decide you want to be in Ohio full time. I know it's hard to leave everything behind in Washington, mom, friends, Justin, Joel, and the rest of the family, but it's the best thing for you. You'll still be there when you come back. The Tacoma house is too crazy for you right now, and some bad shit is going to happen if you don't get out of there. Dad, Grandma and Gramps, Pam and Sue can't wait for you to make the decision, but they don't want to make it for you. Even though you're only 10, you're already trying drugs and alcohol and acting like a shithead half the time. So Dad's going to be super hard on you when you fuck up. But it's because he feels like he's got to make up for the time he missed out on while you were in Washington. He's trying to make you become the best man you can be, but you're not going to be a man for a long time. Trust me. He's not happy with the way his life turned out either. His and Mom's marriage didn't work out and it killed off all their plans in their lives. But they love us more than anything else, even if they have a fucked up way of showing it. Like when Mom disappears for days at a time and Dad kicks our ass for getting out of line. After that, get ready, because you're going to start understanding why dealing with addiction is so hard, because it's going to kick your ass too. It's going to beat you down and fuck your life up more than anything ever will. It's the hardest thing you'll ever have to deal with, and it's something you'll have to worry about for the rest of your life. But you're stronger than you could ever imagine, and you're going to figure that out soon. Drugs and alcohol will alter the trajectory of everything you do, but in the end, you'll be a better person because of it. I've heard it said that God gives his strongest soldiers the hardest battles, and you're going to battle for the rest of your days on Earth. Get used to being in small spaces, because you're going to be locked up for most of your adult life, but you're going to meet some of the best people you'll ever meet, people that'll be with you and a part of your life forever. You're also going to build some of the best relationships you've ever had with family and true friends while incarcerated. It's going to teach you why mental and emotional connections are so important, and why just calling or sending an email to check up and ask how their day is going is going to make such a difference in how their week can turn out after that. You're going to build actual real bonds with the people you love. So I know it seems like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but I promise things are going to be so bright in your future, you're going to need sunglasses. So get ready for a crazy fucking ride, buddy.
Welcome back to Concrete Mama, the podcast. I'm Anthony Covert, and I'll be your guide this week as we take a deeper look into the life of your favorite historian, Stephen Edwards, aka Red. Week to week, Red has given you the insider's experience into the history of Washington State Penitentiary, and if I must say so, he has a knack for it. This week, he bears his heart and gives you a deeper look into the story of his life leading up to his incarceration. There's something special about Red that I've always admired, and I was able to spot it right away and continuously throughout the course of our friendship. Red has a very unique heart, and his love for people is more genuine than most that I have met. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you come from. Red is always willing to give someone a shot and make them feel welcomed. Red and I share a very common trait, and that is our love for food. For the incarcerated, it is a big thing to be willing to share that food with anyone. I remember working with Red at the Correctional Industries box plant, and one day we had permission to make a spread. A spread is a meal that people contribute to and cook and eat together. That day, we settled on nachos and ended up making a lot more food than we could eat. My suggestion was to save it and have it for lunch the next day. But Red, on the other hand, wanted to bless people that couldn't afford to be a part of any spread that day. So we dished out plates and handed them out to the guys that he wanted to share it with. The amount of gratitude those men had was priceless. In this place, people don't always expect to see these acts of kindness. Over the years of our friendship, I have learned that I can count on Red for just about anything, and I am honored to call him my friend. As you listen to his story and learn more about him, one thing you'll see is his love for his family. It is such a beautiful thing, but he can tell it better than I can. So without further ado, I am excited for you to continue to get to know my friend and co-host, Red.
My real name is Stephen Carl Edwards. Most people know me as Red nowadays, especially if you knew me from the streets of Tacoma or the penitentiary. If you knew me back in the 90s in Tacoma or Northwest Ohio, you probably called me Steve-O. I was raised to believe in God, and I was very close with my dad's parents growing up. Grandma Laureen was a nurse my whole life and helped deliver me when I was a baby. Gramps was a fixture in the Baptist church for 40 years. He was a preacher and ran the First Baptist Church in Antwerp, Ohio for the last 20 years of his life. He passed away during the last year of my first prison sentence in 2011. My mom's side of the family is from Tacoma. They lived there all my life, but my mom was actually born in Berlin, Germany. Her parents were in the military. Her dad, William, or Grandpa Tejan, was a mechanic in the Army, and her mom, Rose, was a nurse for the American side during World War II. So later in life, they never lived too far from Fort Lewis McChord. They always stayed around Pierce County. Now, my dad, Tim, was a ranger in the Army in the 80s, and that's how he met my mom, Anita. She already had my sister, Nicole, from another relationship, but when they met, they fell in love, and my dad adopted Nicole, and shortly after, my mom was pregnant with me. So I think I was actually conceived in Washington, but after my mom got pregnant, they decided to move back to Northwest Ohio so my Gramps could marry them in the church. And they stayed together for about, 2 to 4 years after that. I'm not for sure. I'd have to ask her after I was born, but from what I understand, drugs, alcohol, and trust issues caused them to become distant. So mom snatched me up and brought me back to Tacoma. She actually left my sister with my dad and his family in Ohio, probably so she could finish school. She was at school at the time. And they eventually figured out an agreement where if I was going to school in Washington, then I'd go back to Ohio for the summers. And it was always like that, vice versa. My life was always really stable in Ohio, and then a little off the hook when I was in Washington. I was always the youngest and the only white kid in my friend group. I became pretty good at fighting pretty quick and became really good at knowing when my mom and her friends, all of her hustler friends were in a good mood, because I would hit them up one by one for some money, for snacks or whatever. Sometimes it was cash and sometimes it was food stamps. We learned how to turn the stamps into cash, if anybody remembers them days. For those that don't know, you could buy something at the store for 25 cents with the dollar stamp and get the quarters back. And if you did that enough, man, you could make enough money to go buy McDonald's or a 10-sack of weed or whatever you wanted to do, I was around 10 years old when I started smoking weed and drinking. Sis was 6 years older than me, so I paid close attention to everything she was doing too, especially when it came to clothes, music, and that type of shit, Her and my cousin Justin were like my big homies back then, man. He lived right around the corner, and he was in the streets, he was gangbanging, hustling, and robbing. But if I ever needed anything, man, they had my back, My mom was selling crank back then to pay for shit. My sister and her boyfriend at the time took a pound. I don't know what they did with it, but they fucked it off. Didn't have nothing to show for it. So I remember that there was going to be a problem, but I didn't know what was going to happen, because I kept hearing stuff. I could hear them arguing about it, So one morning, me and my friend David, who used to stay over there a lot, we're eating cereal. We're watching cartoons or whatever was on TV that morning, and I heard a knock at the door. I said, "Come in," because I was kind of a lazy-ass kid back then, "Come in." And the knock just got louder. I got pissed and went and answered the door, and there was a 357 in my face, man. It was the first time I ever had a gun in my face, but it wouldn't be the last. It was my mom's so-called friends, right? They want to know where the shit was at and where my mom was. They told me to never open the door unless you know who it is, or it might be the last time, and that's something at 13 that I'll never forget. The main thing I remember is my homeboy David smiling at me because he thought it was a joke, and I assured him that these dudes weren't playing, It was a weird thing for me back then, and I could tell it was the first time he had a pistol on him too, even though he was a few years older than me. They held us in the house for a couple hours until my mom and her boyfriend assured them that they'd get their money back, and they finally left. But soon after, within a day, me, my sister, and one of her girlfriends that had something to do with the missing dope were on a plane back to Ohio to live with my dad and my grandparents. And it was no shit. It was night and day. We went from basically going to school whenever we wanted and doing whatever we wanted to going to school every day, mandatory. We had to be home at a certain time. We had to ask to go places. It was crazy, At the same time, it was really cool to see my dad and my grandparents full time, not just in the summer. My dad worked 6, sometimes 7 days a week back then to take care of us. Well, we always had what we needed, but we were around Gramps and Grandma Lorene a lot. We went to church every Sunday, and we actually liked it most of the time, man. Still to this day, the most famous and most larger-than-life person I've ever met is and always will be my Gramps, James Edwards. He was 6'4", about 300 pounds, man, loved to eat. He was a big guy, But everywhere he went, everyone knew him. It was like driving around with a damn movie star, I don't know if you've ever been to church and the dude preaching is super boring and dull and you're just trying to get out of there, But Gramps was the complete opposite. He had such a presence and such a great aura about himself. He could speak and deliver a message like no one I'd ever seen and have never seen to this day. I remember thinking that I couldn't believe I was related to this guy. He's the sole reason that I believe in God to this day. The way he talked about God and the conviction that he had for someone that he'd never actually seen in real life, I knew that if he was this passionate about God, then I would be too. On the other side, school was completely different for me in Ohio as well. I went from being the only white kid in my friend group to now living in a place where there was only one black family in the whole town. Everyone was white. It was really different for me, of course. I talked and dressed like, I was from the hood still, so I got in a couple fights, but not anything like when I was in Washington. I was the kid that always had the weed. I would snatch my dad's roaches out of the ashtray, out of his truck, or get some weed from my sister or friends. So I soon became the weed man. And I ended up going through phases with acid, mushrooms, ecstasy, cocaine, meth, everything you could think of. And then I ran into pain pills. Even though I did all these other drugs when I was a kid, nothing ever took a hold of me or called to me like pain pills, Not only was it a mental addiction, but it was physical. I started chasing this high nonstop after that, bro. In the 10th grade, I met a lady that sold Oxycontin pair of bills. She broke her back, and she got them every month. At the same time, she'd give me 120 20-milligram oxys and 240 40-milligram oxys at $5 and $10 a piece every month at the same time. And this relationship went on for about 3 years. In the 11th grade, I started going to Vantage Career Center in Van Wert, Ohio. It was a trade school for all the surrounding counties. And since I never really liked school much, I figured that this was the perfect opportunity to learn how to do something with my hands. Welding was my favorite thing to do at the time, and I spent hours upon hours burning up welding rods in class and just in the booth constantly. I really did like working with my hands, and for the first time, I was good at something, other than selling drugs. It felt like I was in a whole different world when I was welding and working with metal. It's something that I'm still passionate about today, 20 years later. I've had a few different jobs over the years in welding, and I've worked in 2 different metal shops in DOC, one here at Walla Walla and the other at OCC in Forks. Also going to a bigger school with more people, I was able to really move every pill. Of course, the ones I didn't keep for myself, because I was a drug addict. This is where I met my first serious girlfriend. She was from Van Wert, knew all the kids that did drugs, even though she didn't get high, she just drank. But she could drink anyone I knew under the table, man. I'm talking, we drank heavy. She helped me move these pills and even stuck around after she graduated. And we were actually in love, man. It was my first love. It was my first thing, man. Our addictions would soon ruin that, though. I had to start selling coke and meth and whatever else I could get my hands on just to pay bills and keep her habits going. She was working at the time, but I had trouble showing up and keeping jobs myself. The lady I was getting the pills from went to prison in 2005 for trying to bring her son drugs to a prison. It was bad, bro. It was the first time that I ever had opiate withdrawals. First time I was ever dope sick. I didn't know what I was going to do, so I heard about a methadone clinic in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I started going there to get my fix and feel better. And this worked for me for about 9 months until I rolled her car one morning driving up there at 5 a.m. And I almost died, man. I rolled it, like 4 or 5 times. She ended up leaving me after this whole thing happened because, she had enough, man. That was the last straw. I couldn't keep up with bills, my habits, none of that on my own. So I made the choice to get on the Greyhound, man. And I came back to Washington. I immediately jumped right into the dope and crime game here. I learned how to hustle and steal to make money by breaking into cars, mailboxing. People would pay money or drugs for stolen merchandise, for stolen checks and credit cards. I ended up going to prison in 08, man, for drugs, a gun, and 15 counts of identity theft. I was forced to be off drugs for the first time since I'd started getting high 11 years ago, and it was great. I felt like I was finally growing up. I like going to work and just being free from drugs and actually being able to think clear-headed. After doing 43 months on a 60-month sentence, I got out and went straight to work. I got a few different jobs through Labor Works and ended up at Western Wood Preserving in Sumner, driving forklifts. I think I felt like since I was doing the right thing for the first time that it was okay to start drinking and smoking weed after work because it was legal and that's what my coworkers and friends were doing at the time. But that led to me getting into a fight, leaving a bar on 6th Ave in Tacoma one weekend. After it was over, my left foot and my right thumb were broke, and I knew I had to go to the hospital, so I went to St. Joe's that night and was prescribed oxycodone for the pain. It only took about a week, and I was right back to being addicted. I wasn't able to go to work because of my foot and thumb. I had no way to pay bills, so I went and met with a friend of mine and got some drugs, Figured I'm just gonna hustle. I started with weed, eventually started selling meth and oxy again, which in turn, led me to doing meth again as well. So here I am with a full-time habit, multiple drugs. I quit going to work altogether even after I healed because all I wanted to do was get high and be in the streets. I got addicted to being in the streets as well, man, and just the fast life. But, I couldn't make enough money selling drugs because I'm getting high. I'm doing everything, right? I had people I owed money to. I had to do something. I started stealing again, man. I'd steal from stores, out of cars, whatever I could do to get drugs. I started using heroin because the oxy was too expensive and didn't work like it used to, which is what led me to where I am today. One morning I'd been drinking all day, getting high, and, I was super dope sick. Left a friend's house, was going to go back to my sister's. Me and my chick at the time, were walking down the street, and I seen a phone in this car. And this work truck on the side of the road, man, and no one's around, the windows are down. I'm like, I gotta have it, so I grabbed it and I turned up the street. The owner came running out of his house to chase me down. Well, I felt like I needed his property more than him at the time, I was gone. I didn't, wasn't thinking straight. I fire a couple rounds into the air. I had a pistol on me, of course, just to try to scare him. It didn't work. He kept following me. I turned around again, I shot a couple more at the ground. I said, man, if you don't quit following me, I'm gonna shoot you. I thought I got away. I thought, I went to my sister's house and I thought we were good. But, house got surrounded, the cops came. I ended up doing like 15 months in county fighting my case, man. They charged me with assault 1, rob 1, burg 1, firearm 2. And, I went to trial and I lost. The judge gave me a below the standard sentence range of 60 months for assault 1, but since I'd been caught with a gun for the second time, she said she had to give me a 120-month gun enhancement for each charge. I left with a 35-year sentence and no possible way to get any time back. Every month was to be served consecutive with no possible good time. At first, I kind of figured my life was over and that I'd grow old in prison, man. I basically accepted that this would be my life. That only lasted for a few months, though, because, I started getting back in touch with friends and family that I became disconnected with during my addiction and people that would help me see the another side of things. My first prison sentence, I figured that doing the time that I'd been given was punishment enough for the crimes. But now that I'm older and I'm able to see the other side of things, I started thinking about the other people that have been affected by what I'd done. All the people and their families affected by the identity theft I committed, the people whose cars I'd broken into, the personal belongings I'd stolen that may not have only had a dollar value to them, but also sentimental value, right? And, the store owners I stole from, whose businesses and livelihoods could have suffered because of me. The lives and families that I may have ruined selling drugs to people that might not have been able to get drugs if they didn't get them from me. And then most of all, my victim, in my case, and all the people and the families that were in the neighborhood that day. I thought it was a good idea to fire a gun in a residential neighborhood to scare off the man that I'd just stolen from, because all I cared about was getting away and getting high one more time. I feel disgusted with myself. Now that I think back, I can't believe that I would have done that, because the person that I am today is not anything like the person that I was back then, And it's not the same person I am when I'm strung out and using. The person that I am today knows better and feels for people more than that. Everybody in that neighborhood, they could have suffered from anxiety, post-traumatic stress, depression, loss of sleep, panic attacks, just from the choices and decisions that I made that day. I can never change what happened, but if I am ever given another chance, I'd love to be involved in something to bring awareness to mental health issues of crime victims, something to help recovering addicts find positive things to do with their time. I know being physically active and working out helped me tremendously. Also something similar for at-risk youth to help keep them from drugs and gangs and to give them something positive like sports to do in their spare time. Like I said before, I know I can't change what I've done in the past, but maybe I can help change someone else's future.
Wow, what a story so far. It's clear that Red's love for his family runs deep. And although I can't personally relate to Red's experience with addiction, I have known many people who have struggled with it, including our co-host Vic. There are many similarities between Vic and Red's stories and journeys with addiction, and the two of them recently sat down together to chat about them.
How you doing today, Red?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I think this is the first time you and I have sat down together, just the two of us, to have a conversation.
Yeah, man. I don't think we've ever had the chance, just the two of us, and I'm looking forward to it.
I want to talk a little bit about, I was listening to your story as the audience is listening to it right now throughout this episode. And what was crazy is there were so many parallels I felt between our two stories, right? Especially with family dynamics. And I think we both are super close with our families, and both of us have a lot of support from our families, right? I definitely had a lot of support from my mom throughout my incarceration, and I think you're having something similar, right, during your incarceration right now, correct?
Absolutely. Since coming to prison, I've built a better relationship with all my family members and close friends as well. I'm blessed to have them with me right now. I had a lot of good times and bad times as a kid, and for the bad times, it's not something that I've ever really held against any of them, you know what I mean? Being locked up the first and this time, we've always just got closer and closer.
That's awesome, because, I think a lot of people that are incarcerated can't really say the same thing, right?
Absolutely. It's kind of sad, man, to see that people don't have their families with them while they're in here.
And I think that's really beautiful to hear you talk about rebuilding those relationships that we fracture during our active addiction, right? Because addiction, in many cases, I think both of ours as examples, it destroys pretty much everything in your life, including, relationships with family members, with loved ones, with friends. And what I think is just so beautiful about your story is that through getting sober, through your incarceration, you are able to reach back out from behind the wall and start to mend those broken relationships, which is exactly what I did. I think there's a lot of work we have to do on ourselves first to forgive ourselves and understand the gravity of what we've done.
The easiest way to explain it is like, me and my sister Nicole are really close. And there's one thing that we never really agree upon. And that's like, now that I'm an adult, I've forgiven my parents for like any kind of shitty things that happened to us when we were kids. And my sister can't really do that. You know what I mean? She still holds grudges with them. And she kind of gets mad at me sometimes about like, well, why aren't you harder on them about stuff, And I think like the difference between us is when I was a kid, I had her a lot of times, like when my parents weren't around. And she didn't have that. You know what I mean? Like she didn't have someone to always like be there for her when they weren't. And so she had it a little bit harder than me. But, I always say, like, I wouldn't be the person I am today if I didn't go through the stuff I didn't go through when I was a kid. You know what I mean? That's something that me and her have conversations about. But I definitely think, like, going through the stuff I went through, I became a better person because of it,
What I found interesting, too, was I think for both of us, when pain pills got brought into the equation, that's when I think we both spiraled. We can both admit like we were both just basically in full blown addiction. That's when I kept secrets. That's when I was hiding it because I liked it so much. And
yeah, bro, it was over after that. Like, so I actually got introduced to pain pills and stuff. There was some dudes like in the neighborhood that were also older than me. They were having pain pills, Percocets, Vicodins, that type of stuff. And once I started taking those, talk about like doing drugs and being able to hide it. I mean, you could just have a couple in your pocket and then boom, take them. And then now you're high the rest of the day. And no one sees you smoking. No one sees you like snorting nothing. So it was so much easier to hide and also so much easier to get. Cause I mean, like we used to get them from people's parents, medicine cabinets or whatever, It's what led me to prison both times. It's what ruined like relationships. It's an actual physical and mental addiction.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I was over. Like it was just like, this feels too good. I want to do this every day. And it is. It's a physical and a mental addiction and emotional addiction too, right? Because it just makes everything feel numb but good. One thing I grappled with after I got arrested was all the damage I had caused and trying to forgive myself for doing that. And also like living my life in a way that would make amends for all the people I hurt, right? Because it's not the kind of person I wanted to be. I never wanted to cause harm to anybody.
When I was like stealing, all this stuff was for my addiction. You know what I mean? It was stuff that I would never normally do, but I just knew that I had to have another hustle to feed my addiction,
Same thing. I found myself doing things I never thought I would do, like stealing mail, running other people's credit reports, and then spending money on their credit accounts, and then getting all this merchandise to then sell. And then all of it just goes into feeding the addiction. Because then what do we do when we make all this money? We go and we buy drugs, we get high, and then we go to the casino. And then we gamble the rest of it away. And I was like, what was that all of that for anyway? Like we just made, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in one day and we just blow it all. Like, well, this isn't tenable anyway. I remember I just look at myself some days in the mirror. I'd have these moments of lucidity like, what are you doing? But I just couldn't stop.
Exactly. And another thing that I was never a gambler until I started doing drugs and like committing crimes. And it was like all these things would go together somehow.
Oh my God. Exactly. I was never a gambler ever. And like my ex all of a sudden was like, decides to pick up a slot machine habit and a gambling habit. And then I was like, well, fuck it. If we're going to be here at the casino, all right, I'll just,
And I know for a fact there's like hundreds of thousands of people that are going to hear this and be like, that's exactly what I was doing, or that's exactly what, you know what I mean? I wasn't someone that was like stealing from my family or stuff like that, but I had a lot of people that loved me and I would just like completely ignore them or like disappear because I didn't want them to see me in the state that I was in. As long as I had hid stuff before, like I couldn't hide it anymore. Like I was full blown addiction mode. And all I cared about was myself at the time. Like, of course, I loved my family and my friends and stuff, and I still cared about them. But I was like, the addiction always came first, And so I have a lot of regret, and I feel really terrible about that still. But the best thing I can do is kind of just like try to mend those relationships as best as I can. And I think I've been doing a pretty good job of it, and I want to continue to do that. But it wasn't until I went to prison the first time and my family and my close friends would still be there for me, even though when I was out there for however long in my addiction, living like a modern day pirate, basically, I wasn't there for them. But now here I am and I need help, and they're there to help me. They're there to be there for me, you know? And that's when I started realizing, like, I need to change. I need to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life and quit hurting people that love me.
Thank you, Vic and Red, for sharing such personal and vulnerable parts of yourselves. And for our listeners, both out there in the free world and for those of you who are doing time on the inside, addiction is a powerful force that can deeply impact individuals, families, and communities. Almost everyone has been touched by addiction, and maybe you're silently suffering with it right now. We want you to know that you're not alone. You can break the cycle and reach out for help. You don't have to figure it out on your own. There are a lot of resources and people on the other side of it that are ready and willing to help. We have resources for you in the show notes, and you can also write to us here at the show. Now, let's head back to the studio and hear the rest of Red's story and conversation with Demar.
So, a young man growing up in Tacoma, in that household, take us there.
You know, we had a big family. There was always people around, whether it was family members, friends of my sisters, friends of mine, friends of my mom's. People were always around. People were always partying. It was always either a party and everybody's happy or people are fighting. I just got used to that. Them type of emotions were just normal for me back then. You know what I mean? I thought it was either one or the other. There was never like a middle ground. You know, I didn't get that until I moved to Ohio. But it wasn't all bad. You know, it wasn't all good. But, you know, it made me the person I am today. But there was love with, you know, me, my mom, my sister. Like I said, we have a big family. My mom's got a ton of brothers and sisters, so they would be around, and it was love. But, you know, they were all getting high. So it was, you know, you never really knew what you were going to get.
What was your relationship like with your mom?
My mom had she had an old school Monte Carlo. I want to say it was like a 79, the bigger body.
Is it like the one you got on your cell?
It's kind of like that, yeah.
All in your cell right now.
It's kind of like the one that's
MC.
It's kind of like that one, but it was a hard top and it was silver. It was a metallic silver and it had maroon interior, you know, maroon guts. I remember I loved that car, man. I loved riding around in that car with my mom. I always felt larger than life when I was in that car with her. I also felt like when she wasn't around, you know, I had some kind of like, I guess, animosity because she wasn't always there, you know? And so a lot of times me and my sister were at the spot by herself. Like I said, if she was there, she would make sure we ate. But, you know, there was some times where me and my sister were eating shit out of the fridge. It's like there's nothing in there, you know? You ever had a mustard sandwich? You know what I mean? Like, we had mustard sandwiches. We had my mom used to, like, when she would cook, she would make big meals, right? But she didn't cook all the time. But there would be like leftover baby carrots, or like maybe like some or like some salad dressing. So we would dip into the dressing, and that was what we ate. You know what I mean? That. Whatever was left over.
I remember doing that too. Bread. We used to dip bread in that stuff.
Yeah. And like the Thousand Island or the ranch or whatever it was. Me and my sister used to say carrots and ranch because that's what we had, you know. But, you know, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't always, it's not like we were starving. She would come home after she was doing her thing and, you know, be like, oh, you guys haven't ate? And she would start tripping and be like, Mom, it's 11 o'clock at night, you know, and then we were going to the drive-thru, you know, like it was like that, you know.
Tell me about your sister. Tell me about what your connection's like with your sister, what your life was like with your sister.
Me and sis, we were either really loving and, you know, couldn't wait to see each other, or we hated each other. You know what I mean? Like, we were either fighting or we were hugging, you know. But, you know, she always made sure I was good. Like I said, she was partying and doing her thing back then too, but she would ask me, you know, if I ate or shit like that too back then, you know. She tried to be kind of like my mother figure when Mom wasn't around. But yeah, we were good. You know, we were good unless we were fighting, and that was about half the time.
Like a love-hate thing.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, we had one of those.
Sister. But I think that's because of the dynamic. There was an imbalance there. Like, she's your sister, but also she's your mom at times. You know, and that's kind of what helps you, and you love her. So you also talked about, you know, your grandfather. Seems like those guys were your two biggest role models, really. Your sister, she was important to you. You know, I'm around you a lot, man, so I know, like, family is everything. I think that's where we connect to.
Yeah.
I'm huge on family. But your relationship with your grandfather, that had a big impact on you.
Yeah, just and it wasn't just him in the church, because like, that was his life. He was everywhere we went, people knew him. They knew who I was because I was his grandson. I mean, he was popular, man. Like when he wasn't doing that, we would sit in the living room and watch old Westerns. He liked John Wayne. We watched all kinds of Westerns. Yeah. And then I remember his last favorite movie was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Man, we would sit there and laugh about that. And I'm older now, you know what I mean? I'm grown up now, but I would remember sitting there watching that with him and laughing. And we just always joked around. Like me and him had that, you can get that relationship where you just constantly joking with somebody.
He lets you be you, it sounded like.
Yeah, we were always joking and laughing. Man, I miss him. I miss him a lot.
He's no longer with us?
Yeah, no, he passed away in my last year at OCC in 2011. I was trying to get out of there so I could see him in person one last time, but he didn't make it, man. He had he got cancer, and he couldn't make it until I got out, and that's another reason that I'm so hard on myself, about this prison shit, being in here and missing stuff like that.
Most definitely. I mean, I got a chance to see you at an event with your family, man, and like they love you. So many people came, you had like a lot of visitors, man. So I just want to let you know too, man, that you're I'm watching what you're doing, and that's why you're a part of my life and what we have going on, because we're trying to do things differently. So I appreciate you for being so honest about that.
Thank you, bro.
What's one of the biggest lessons you learned from him? Because it sounds like, this guy was really, like, and it's crazy because my grandfather, I was real close to him, man. So what's one of the biggest things you learned? This was like your father figure, basically.
No, my dad was around. It's not like he wasn't there, but, he worked a lot. So I just, I always feel like I missed out on something. I always feel like I missed that time because I was doing stupid shit, I luckily still have my dad today, but I don't have him anymore, But yeah, he just, that's probably where I get my
your humor,
my humor, and family, love for family.
Yeah,
just trying to do the right thing. I try, he ingrained in me to be a good person. Wow. Like people fuck up, people do stupid shit, but just at the end of the day, be a good person, right?
Yeah. What kind of impact has this sentence had on your family?
It's been rough, man. I talked about Maya and Olivia earlier. My sister has a son, Ramon, too. I was there for the first couple years of Maya's life, a little bit of Olivia's. I didn't get to see Ramon grow up. I was either in another state or I was locked up when they were growing up, so they knew who I was, but they didn't really know me. So even though I don't have kids, those are like my kids, It's sad that I didn't get to see them grow up, but I can be there for them now that they're older. They're all adults now. And so I have a good relationship with them, but I feel bad because I didn't get to help them when they were kids. I didn't get to be there for them. I didn't get to see them go through life. I didn't get to help them have a better childhood that I did,
I seen you at the event with your nieces too, man. They love you. Uncle Red. Your family love, like I said, man, it was huge. You have a huge impact on them, and you still can make a difference. We still can make a difference.
Yeah, I just wish I'd have been there for them more when they was kids, and they had another role model in their life, But I try to make up for that now. I try to keep in touch with them, and Maya calls me Deedee to this day. I was her first words. She was trying to say Stevie. But her first words were Deedee. She was trying to come, you know what I mean? And so she still calls me Deedee to, now that she's 25,
Yeah.
And so, we've always been real close, but I just wish we could have been closer,
I know a common statement that people make about us being in here incarcerated. Like, of course, like, I hope that we can grow up with wisdom. Like, everyone doesn't grow up with wisdom to where it's like, well, they should have thought about that at the time. Like, why do you have to come here to become a man? Or why do you have to come here to grow up, right? But what is something that you'd like to say to people out there in the world? Like, about your story and just about criminals, man. Just those who violate the law and come here, and then they're hearing you like express your story, man. You're talking about, staying consistent, working a job, how you wished you would have been a better role model for certain people, just showing that emotion and being honest about that. Like,
I would just say that we can change, and people can change, man. Just because you've been doing something forever, or you just started doing something, you can switch it up, man, start doing something different. So just because you're in here, that's not who you are. What you're in prison for does not define you, or what you've been doing your whole life does not define you. You can always change and become a better person. You can change the narrative that people have of you.
So, just a hypothetical. Your victim stumbles upon this interview, this podcast, and it's you doing this work. What would you say?
I just say I really apologize, for that day. The extents that I went through to steal something that belonged to him, it was ridiculous, and I regret it every day. If there's anything that I could help him with when I get out to make his life easier, he needs me to mow his grass, I'll go mow his grass, you know what I mean? Like, just to make up for that. If he wants me to wash his car, just to try to show him that I am regretful and I wish that would have never happened, But like I said, the person that I was then is not the person I am today. And the person I was when I was all strung out and doing the most to that I thought I needed to do to get by is not who I am as a man. And that's not who I am in real life.
Through overcoming and healing his own trauma and being willing to share his story with others, Red's journey is a true testament to the possibility for people to change and grow. And he has truly become a leader within the community at WSP, all the while maintaining what truly matters to him, and that's family. Now, for our weekly history report, we're switching things up this episode. We have learned a lot about the history of Washington State Penitentiary, and most recently, Red talked about the different groups that formed during the Concrete Mama days of the RGC. On this episode, we are bringing in my brother Demar to talk about one of those groups called Black Prisoners Forum Unlimited, or BPFU, which was an organization that was developed in 1969. But let me stop there, and let's hear from Demar.
This week, we're doing something slightly different. I know you're used to hearing my brother Red bring you some Walla Walla history, but I got this. And don't worry, he'll be back. Remember last week Red spoke to you about the Motorcycle Club? This time I want to talk to you about the BPFU, the Black Prisoners Forum Unlimited. This was one of the 3 groups that was left toward the end of the RGC days. In the famous book Concrete Mama, it was said that during the years of 1978 and 79, the BPFU existed primarily as a social club for black men that were incarcerated at Walla Walla. The initial goals of the group was to gather to help black men doing time reclaim their culture and identity. This was following a wave across the country in step with the 70s movement of black leadership led by the influence of national leaders of the Black Panther movement. The group's focus was culture and community, as well as prison conditions. But over time, rifts grew due to several leaders of the group being Muslim or having different philosophies regarding what direction the group should take. Ultimately, the prison culture, fueled by power or drugs influencing many of the members' choices and motives, led to the crumble of the BPFU. But before we talk about how things fell apart, let's go into the things they established. That was pretty cool if you ask me. Inside the prison, the BPFU was responsible for guiding and connecting local colleges to classes developing on the inside that men doing time were interested in taking. Most of the outside support that came inside the prison was largely led and championed by the members of the BPFU, centered on teaching culture and history, as well as pushing to change poor prison conditions. Another cool program that was largely led and developed by black men who were members of the BPFU and also boxers was the boxing program inside of the prison, a thing that flourished and produced some of the most skilled fighters in the country. The amateur boxing matches inside the prison also brought in community fans. When matches took place, many locals came inside and from around the state to watch fights take place in the yard and gym and smoker rings. These rings were used for developing fighters. It was a practice ring where the fights took place but didn't count on your official record. This program shaped many amateur fighters into pros, and at one time had as many as 11 fighters. 3 were experienced Golden Glove champions, as well as 1 heavyweight champion and another light heavyweight champion by the name of Curtis Johnson, who became the face of the program and the representation for incarcerated fighters around the country. It is said in the Washington State Penitentiary archives that Curtis Johnson was a Golden Glove champion in several states and turned pro inside Walla Walla in the late 70s, and as an amateur won over 111 fights. Curtis was also a member of the BPFU and served as a sergeant of arms to the group. But now, let me tell you a story about how money, drugs, and power struggles all led to the collapse of the BPFU. During this time, when the legitimate activities of the group start to dwindle due to drugs, the heroin pipeline flowing into the prison was the main problem. And the power of the BPFU rested on one man who had the heroin pipeline in his grasp. His name was Cadillac Brown. The bikers in Cadillac Brown had an agreement that became the partnership between the groups to control the heroin sales and the distribution inside of the prison. The bikers, who were mainly a group of men with life sentences, became the dealers and debt collectors for Cadillac Brown. You learned from Red in the last episode how powerful the Bikers Club was, so this served well because the bikers were the largest group in the penitentiary. The major focus for the bikers and the BPFU became keeping debts under control and monitoring the prison lockdowns, which was bad for business, especially the drug trade. Under a lockdown, sellers couldn't supply customers, the money stopped flowing, and junkies went into withdrawal. Maintaining sales required keeping order within the prison. The inmates called it keeping the lid on. In the book Unusual Punishment that highlights the nature of the drug dynamic in the prison during this time, a former BPFU member said this:
"When you looked around, there were several people shooting dope on the breezeways, and the guard would walk right by you like they didn't see nothing. Some people would be sitting there with needles stuck in their arms."
When it came to the BPFU and the bikers' drug contract, the tragic ending would be one that ended in bloodshed. In March of 1976, one of the bikers witnessed a man in the prison named Steve McCoy, who worked in the kitchen selling heroin. After watching for several days, they confronted him. The bikers had the contract to sell all heroin coming into the prison through Cadillac Brown. But after missing payment, Cadillac tried giving the drugs to McCoy to deal, and things got violent. After confronting McCoy and telling him to return the dope, a meeting was then called between the bikers and the BPFU, and they said if the drugs weren't returned, there would be problems. Later, after seeing McCoy, they warned him to give the dope back to the bike shop. McCoy refused, and the next morning, in a brutal knife fight, McCoy was killed. That's a wild story, right? I guess it's a testament to how fast things can spin out of control in here. And also, when drugs are in the equation, how severe things can become. Today, the BPFU doesn't exist, but there are still cultural groups striving to better themselves and celebrate customs. It's just different because it isn't about power, it's about liberation. Today, we have a platform across the state of Washington called the BPC, the Black Prisoners Caucus. This program exists to create community and provide service and education to all black men on the inside, but we're also diverse and welcoming to others. We also strive to work with the administration to make this a better place to do time, because we realize it isn't the 70s and we can learn from the past by reflecting on our mistakes as people and making better choices moving forward. I think anybody can take a lesson from that.
We want to thank you for listening to this episode of Concrete Mama, the podcast. Next week, we take a break from our regular scheduled programming to give you some more looks behind the scenes of Concrete Mama before we close out the season with our finale the following week. Don't miss it.
We'd like to acknowledge Red's family for their undying support of him while incarcerated. And we'd also like to thank Greg Lehman and Jeremy Burnham of the Union Bulletin in Walla Walla for covering the story of Concrete Mama, the podcast. That's it for this episode of Concrete Mama. But before we go, here's who makes it happen. Zach Bentz is our editor, audio engineer, and graphic designer. Megan Sanchez handles our social media content and audience engagement. Vic Chopra and me, Rachel Check, are the showrunners and executive producers. Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla and Washington State DOC have made this project possible. For more info, check out our show notes, and you can write us with questions about the podcast at the email and address listed there. We will read and answer some of them on future episodes. You can also subscribe to support us and get extra content. Concrete Mama is more than a podcast. It's a platform for voices that need to be heard. If this episode resonated with you, share it, support it, leave us a 5-star rating, and keep listening. You can find Unincarcerated Productions on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and various other social media platforms. Thanks for listening.